Alright, so another update on 900 V2 here. Look at that. The 4070 Ti is in. Yes, that is a 4070 Ti. Why did we get this 4070 Ti when I normally buy these smaller ones? And this is still a Zotac. This is an Amp Extreme Aero. Amp Extreme Aero. So it does have a true 3-slot. I have a dedicated video on this thing, opening it up. True 3-slot bracket. That already holds it way tighter. It does, however, not tie that bracket into the cooler, which I really wish it would. Some brands do. There is an L bracket, though, that goes from it. You can see it right there, right? The only thing that would improve it is actually screwing it into the, like this screw could go straight into the cooler itself, or especially if it can go into the heatsink. That would be amazing. That'd just cinch that right up. But yeah, this thing's massive. Look at that thing. That's the same size as a 4090, I recall, like their 4090. Now, it's not even just a 3-slot, it's 3 and a bit slot. They call it 3.5. I'm not going to call that, like, half slot, but it is more than 3. And that is why, one other cool thing about the Torrent is this GPU support bracket. There's a little 45-degree angle bracket that screws in from the back. Then there's a screw in here that adjusts it up and down. I don't necessarily like that mechanism the best, but it works. And then there's a little rubber stopper with a screw here where you can move it in and out. Now, because this GPU is as big as it is, we only have that much more we can lower this. So a true 4-slot would work with this. Probably not much more. And because of how big these fans are, they're not even 100mm, they're 110mm on here. And they're thick ones too. Like that's like, I've seen fans cooling cases smaller than that. That's why, check this out. Air in the bottom, air into the GPU going up, air in the front, air CPU out the back. So this is why I'm kind of debating throwing that power supply into exhaust as well. But yeah, with it extended all the way out, if you look, it just made it, even with these giant fans. Check that out right there. See? Just made it. And what I used it to do is, this wasn't sagging that much because it is a true 3-slot with a 3-slot bracket. Unlike most, even 4 slots will still have a 2-slot bracket. But what I did is, if you can see right here on this heatsink is straight, right? And it just dipping ever so slightly, even with the support in there. So what I did is I actually pushed up on it and used that as kind of a way to level it. The other way you could do is literally get yourself a level out. One nice thing about this card is, despite it being a real thick boy card, if you notice, it doesn't go above our CPU tower heatsink. So we're not running into compatibility, because if you look at some of the Asus ones of these that are at 4 slots thick, it is a little bit taller, but it does not go above this heatsink, which is like a standard height. I don't remember what it is, but you know, it's like Be Quiet's entry, or not even entry, like it's from their entry level line. I think it's one of the higher ends from there because it is the RGB one, but it is not like their Dark Rock Pro or anything like that. Obviously, it's a Pure Rock 2FX, I believe. So it's a standard height. So we're actually a little bit lower than that, which I like to see. So basically, if your tower cooler fits, your GPU should fit. That's good. That's good to know. The reason why we got this one is this whole thing here is some crazy extra Spectra RGB, whereas on the standard amp, or amp something, the not extreme amp, it might have RGB where it's just the logo or something like that. This one is a crazy level of RGB, and as we said, this is an RGB build, so that is where every piece of this, you know, case, get it with the RGB, spend a little bit more. Graphics card, get it with the RGB. Motherboard, get it with the RGB. So and that's where RGB costs money, guys, is because if you want a RGB build, each thing is, you're spending a little bit. Like, I could have gone with a Noctua Redux cooler for $40 here. I think this was right around 60, plus I added a second fan to really fill that out. Look at that fitment, though, even with that front fan on there. Easy peasy clears that RAM. I could swap that out any day of the week. Love the fitment on the back, too. Just clears this bottom of the the heatsink on this ASRock. So yeah, look at that. Look at that thing. People are like, "Oh, why you need such a big case for this build?" That's why. A Torrent Compact ends here. You see this line, right? That line is much closer on a Torrent Compact. It's right there, actually. So it is literally ends there. What do you see about this GPU? It is longer. It's bigger than the Torrent Compact in length. I have a picture on Twitter of it being in the Antec 300 I used for testing that this motherboard was in, and it's longer than the case, or as long as the case. I think it's 14 inches. Yeah, 14 inches. So if you're getting one of those real big cards, you make sure you plan for it. This one at least has a reasonable height. Not with, like I'm saying, with his slots. Height is like height off the motherboard, where like if you're running a tower cooler, it'll fit perfectly with it. You know. Personally, I would get the smaller 4070 Ti if you don't need the RGB. Because I could even fit their smaller non-extreme amp in that ITX build right there. Easy peasy. Maybe not easy peasy. It's because the ends are... Here's the nice thing about the new Zotex cards have this rounded butt on them. So what that let me do is put the butt in first and then rotate it in. Perfect fit. Perfect fit. So... something to keep in mind. For the most part, I've ran Zotex cards in the past when I needed cards that like EVGA didn't make. Like I have specifically a GT430 that had a DisplayPort on it. Zotex often does some weird stuff, kind of like EVGA did, just different weird stuff. And for me, especially because they're basically the only one during the 30 series that made reasonably sized cards. And in 40 series, like I said, they make a small 4070 Ti. Whereas I think it was Asus, their ROG card is the exact same size as a 4090. Their 4060 or 4060 Ti, which is insanity. You do not need that. In this case, this cooler is definitely overkill for a 4070 Ti. This card, though, because it is the OC version, not only is it the Extreme, it's the Extreme OC. So it does come with the 3 power pins on the 12-volt high power connector. We're going to be using a native connector here. But what that does mean is that this should have 450 watts available to it once we plug either that adapter in or the native 12-volt high power cable, meaning this should have a little bit of headroom for overclocking. If you get one that only has the 2 plugs on it, which at least for Zotac is the non-OC versions, like, yes, it only comes out of the factory slightly slower, but you're going to have almost no room for overclocking because you're going to be limited to that 300 watts. Now, there might be ways around that. You know, get your own 12-volt high power cable, flash the BIOS, blah, 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 blah. The price difference is minimal, if anything. So just get this, get it out of the gate. Get the OC version. Because realistically, and I'm not saying like manually do this, just go into MSI Afterburner or Zotec's own software, and I normally I'd say Precision or UGA, but that's not really a thing anymore. And you just slide the sliders, hit apply. Then there's an auto OC mode if you want to go a little bit farther and have like about an hour to burn. Enable that, let it rip, and it'll figure out your voltage curves. And basically what that does is the voltage curve won't necessarily give you better, like more speed, but it's going to more optimize your voltage, which then theoretically can get you more speed. So it might turbo higher, but it inherently isn't just going to raise the speed necessarily. The last thing we need to get in here is probably going to be in this very last slot right there. I have right over there a USB 3, extra USB 3 header because this board has 2 of them. Something we paid extra for, so we might as well use it on this Pro Series. In my opinion, this Pro Series costs more. Comes with a Wi-Fi card I swapped out because it was some garbage like Broadcom or something card. No, MediaTek. It was MediaTek Wi-Fi. Put Intel Wi-Fi in here. So I wish it just didn't come with it. And then it has RGB. So that's the big thing. I have both all the fans right there and the RGB there. Hopefully, I'm hoping we don't run into an issue where, because I have nothing plugged into the CPU up here. If that's an issue, I'll see if there's a way to trick it. But yeah, so I'm going to put that in down here so we can at least use it. Personally, I would get the PG Lightning. It's actually a board that's 1 or 2 steps down from it. It's their lowest end X5, not X570, X670E board. The PCIe layout is way better. It has a slot for a Wi-Fi card and a spot for antennas. It just doesn't come with it. You can buy that yourself. But the PCI Express layout is way, way, way better. Because if you look at this, with this big old card in here, we only have that 1X slot available. Now, the way this lines up is we can easily drop in 2 more M.2s. I don't know if those are slots 2 and 3. Hopefully they are. But you only have a 1X card down there. So if you like wanted to throw in a capture card, not an option with this board. Literally not an option. Unless it happens to be a 1X. Which you could do PCI Express by 4.0 1X. But likelihood of that actually being a thing is quite low. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the update on this and see why I ended up having to go with the torrent. It did fill out, obviously, but that's because that GPU with that RGBs, you know, once you start being like, I want RGB, you know, you gotta go with the bigger case. Bigger case costs more. You go with the fans. That wasn't actually a bad deal because you could buy the version with the RGB fans, and Fractal's RGB fans are good. But then you got to buy an RGB tower cooler. Or all-in-one cooler. Either one of those is going to be more money. You know, it just kind of adds on. And I forget the budget for this, but let's just say like the RGB didn't necessarily cost $500, but if we compare it to Shane's build, which there should be a video on, this build is $500 more. There are some places where it is actually a better build. Because when we have to buy the RGB version, that's usually a higher spec part as well. It's not like you're just getting RGB for the money, but it forces you to get a higher end part. Also, we dropped in some more extra storage, like we went 2 terabyte airway, stuff like that, because we had budget for it. Now in the end, the other thing to remember to budget for is like, I did a oopsie. I mean, the person was fine with it, but I figured out the budget as the main components, and there was basically about another $100 of little accessories that ended up needing to get on there, and that's sort of stuff like fan cables. We have in here like our USB-C right angle adapter right there, our USB 3.0 right angle adapter, our 24-pin right angle adapter. Now, normally in a normal case, this I could pull it out from over here and it would look way cleaner. That is one thing that Fractal could improve is, yes, this is all SSD mounts in the back of here, but who uses 2.5-inch SSDs really anymore? Especially if you're building a fully brand new build, just go with NVMe's. QLC M.2s, which would go on the board, there can be like 4 or 5 of them on there. Those are going to be faster and better than any 2.5-inch one, and they're cheaper if you go on the low end. Like if you look at it, because there's just less materials. Remember, it's a little stick of gum rather than a big case. A lot of those are metal. The cheaper ones start going plastic. Then you strip them when you screw them in. The list goes on. Technically, this case also fits 3.5-inch hard drives, but that's where I put the RGB and fan controller, so that's not happening here. But with how cheap and ubiquitous storage is, if he needs more than the 2 terabyte, I'd tell him to go and get a cheap another 2 terabyte cheap QLC cashless drive, or a 4 or even an 8 terabyte. Yes, it won't necessarily be the cheapest, like as cheap as getting like a hard drive or something. But in that case too, here's the other thing. My real recommendation, if you need a lot of storage, you probably don't just want to access it on this. Go buy an NAS, or go build a NAS. In this case, his previous system, which is a 6th gen, it won't support Windows 11. Kind of technically you can force it, but really doesn't support Windows 11. So when that happens, what we could do is just convert that over to his NAS, throw, Unraid or something on there, and probably have to change chassis because his previous one was a S series, Define S, so it's like the airflow style or water cooling style, so very open front like this. We need something else that can fit a load of hard drives instead of a load of cooling. So yeah, let me know how you guys are enjoying the updates here, and I'll try and get you one more once this thing is up and running and done. Like, holy jeez, do you see how shiny that thing is? See that? Apparently bling bling. RGB RAM as well, paid a little bit extra for that. It's the same 6000 CL30, 32 gigs that we've been using. It's just the RGB variant. It comes in silver or black. I think the black was the better choice here. Just stealths out. I kind of do wish the board was... It's actually quite silver underneath there. I don't know if you see that. So I do wish the board was blacked out, but I think we would have had to go to the Extreme series, like I kind of did on the home theater PC, and then the price shoots up a lot more, like $100 more, and no, 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 no.